All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving deep into the world of Turla.
A ransomware group that's really not your typical smash and grab operation.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
They've been linked to some serious breaches,
Oh, absolutely.
including the Solarwinds attack.
Yeah,
And they seem to target, well, the big fish.
that's right.
Military networks, government institutions, places where a data breach is more than just losing some files.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about national security.
Exactly.
This is some serious stuff. What makes Turles so different is how they operate.
Yeah.
So unlike, say, your average ransomware gang that blasts out phishing emails to everyone and anyone,
Right.
Turla crafts incredibly targeted messages.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they're designed to fool even the most security-conscious people.
So they're not casting a wide net, they're going after specific individuals.
You got it. It's spear phishing, but we're talking like art form level.
Wow, so it's very, very targeted.
Very targeted.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they exploit any kind of compromised credentials they can find. Sometimes they buy them on the dark web.
Makes sense.
And they even manage to sneak in through software supply chains.
Yeah, thinking back to that SolarWinds attack,
Exactly.
that's how they did it.
They inserted malicious code into the actual software updates.
It's scary how effective that is.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Because it just bypasses all the usual security.
Exactly. Traditional security is not built for this.
So it's like hiding in plain sight.
You got it.
You think you're safe, you're updating your software, but
Right.
you're actually letting the bad guys in.
It's a nightmare.
So they've used these very clever ways to get in.
Right.
But they don't just, like, sit there, do they?
Absolutely not.
They're on the move.
They are. They use all sorts of techniques to move around the network.
Oh,
So they'll steal credentials,
okay.
they'll execute commands remotely,
Makes sense.
and they'll set up backdoors so they can always get back in.
So even if you kick them out one way, they've got another way in.
Exactly.
It's like that thief who picks the lock on the front door, but also sets up secret entrances all over the house.
You got it.
You just can't get rid of them. And I guess this is why those typical perimeter defenses, like firewalls, they don't really work, do they?
Not really, no. Because, again, thinking about that thief analogy, the security guard's at the front door.
Yeah.
But someone's already sneaking out the back with the crown jewels.
And those crown jewels being all our data.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to understand why those traditional security measures just aren't cutting it.
Yeah.
But they have to communicate, right?
They do.
I mean, if they're this good at hiding, how are they talking to their command and control servers without getting caught?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. They use encryption, obviously,
Okay.
to scramble their communications so it looks like normal internet traffic. They route their command and control traffic through all sorts of places, compromised websites, social media platforms. They even create their own custom domains that are designed to look totally innocent.
Very clever.
Very, very clever.
And then I heard something about, and I don't even know if this is true, but satellites.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right?
They have been known to use satellite communications.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
To make it even harder to track them down. I mean, that's like something out of a spy movie.
It really is.
Okay, so we've established that they're stealthy, they're resourceful, and they're pretty technically advanced.
Mhm.
But what are they after? I mean, are they just in it for a quick payday like other ransomware gangs?
That's the thing. It's not always clear. I
Ah.
mean, they do demand ransoms, absolutely.
Okay.
But a lot of times, they'll actually steal sensitive data before they encrypt anything,
Oh, wow.
which suggests that maybe their motives are a bit more complex than just, getting some quick cash.
So maybe they're after trade secrets or, I don't know, intelligence.
Could be.
Or even, I don't know, trying to get leverage of some kind.
That's right.
So it's not just about the money, it's about the information itself.
Absolutely. And this is why those traditional ransomware mitigation strategies, like just paying the ransom, might not be enough.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you might get your data back, but who knows what damage has already been done.
That is a worrying thought.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of their recent attacks.
Okay.
I mean, I know they've been linked to some big ones that really made the news.
Yeah,
The SolarWinds breach is a perfect example.
absolutely.
I mean, they exploited the trust in a widely used software platform to get into a whole network of super high-value targets.
Right. I mean, government, agencies, private companies, it was a huge wake-up call, I think, for the cybersecurity world.
Yeah. because it showed, I guess, how vulnerable these software supply chains really are.
Yeah,
And that an attack like that can just cascade through all these different organizations.
exactly like dominoes.
One domino falls, and then the whole chain collapses.
That's it. And again, it showed that Turla isn't just interested in quick wins.
Right.
They were in those systems for a while,
Yeah.
stealing sensitive information.
Yeah.
They're playing the long game.
They're playing a very long game. Okay. And then there was that attack on Ukrainian military networks,
Oh, yeah.
which is just, I mean,
Terrifying.
that's a whole other level.
Yeah, and that's where we see them using this kind of mix of custom malware that they develop themselves,
Right.
but also tools they've just, picked up from the cybercriminal world.
So they're not afraid to use whatever's out there.
Whatever works, they'll use it. And that's what makes them so dangerous, because they can't adapt.
It's like they're building a Frankenstein's monster of cyber weapons, taking bits and pieces from everywhere.
You got it. And of course, they manage to infiltrate military networks, steal data, possibly disrupt operations. I mean, it shows how big a threat they are, especially in a geopolitical context.
Yeah.
It's not just about, money or data.
Right.
It's about potentially influencing conflicts.
Exactly. And then, and this one really surprised me, the Starlink attack,
Oh, yeah.
that they went after a satellite internet constellation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that's used in a lot of critical situations.
Right.
The most bold move.
It is. It shows, again, they're not afraid to go after, supposedly the most secure and resilient infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they can adapt.
Yeah.
They find vulnerabilities where we don't even think to look.
It's a good reminder that nothing is truly foolproof, especially when you're up against an adversary like this.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so we talked about Ukraine, we talked about Starlink.
Yeah.
Then there's the critical infrastructure in Pakistan.
Right.
They're going after energy. They're going after telecommunications.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are willing to disrupt essential services.
Absolutely. And again, in that attack, they exploited a known vulnerability
Oh, really?
in a software component that's used everywhere.
Wow.
So it highlights, again, how important patch management is.
Yeah.
Staying on top of security updates is crucial because even if we know about a vulnerability,
Right.
if it's not patched, it's still a target,
Still an open door.
an open door.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, looking at all these different attacks,
Right.
what are the key takeaways here?
Well, I think the biggest one is that Turla is incredibly adaptable,
Right.
resourceful.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not bound by the same playbook that other ransomware groups use.
Right.
They use whatever works. Their own malware, tools they've borrowed from cyber criminals, zero-day exploits.
So you can't just defend against the known threats. You've got to be ready for anything.
Exactly. And it's clear they're not just after money.
Yeah.
I mean, this is espionage, data theft, disruption. It's a multi-pronged attack.
So how do we even defend against that?
Well, we need to think in terms of defense in depth.
Okay.
Not just preventing attacks, but detecting them quickly, responding effectively.
Right.
And that means having a solid incident response plan,
Okay.
reliable backups, and the right security tools and technologies in place.
And I guess this is where a company like Stonefly comes in.
Absolutely.
We talked before about their air-gapped and immutable backups.
Right.
That seems like a pretty strong defense against something like this.
It is. I mean, they're designed specifically with these kinds of threats in mind.
So even if the worst happens, you've got that safety net. You can recover your data.
Exactly.
That peace of mind must be worth a lot.
It's invaluable. I mean, it lets you focus on containing the attack, eradicating the threat, knowing that your data is safe and sound.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about Turla, their tactics, their impact. It's a bit scary, but it's also, I think, really important to understand what we're up against.
I agree. Knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And being aware of the threat is the first step to protecting ourselves.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up this section, I just want to say, I think it's clear that the fight against these kinds of threats, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Absolutely.
It's going to take ongoing vigilance, a willingness to adapt, and, a commitment to constantly learning and improving.
I completely agree. It's not just about people, though.
Right.
Technology plays a huge role as well.
So what kind of technology can help organizations level the playing field against a group like Turla?
Well, endpoint detection and response tools, those are essential.
EDR.
Exactly.
Okay.
They monitor and analyze endpoint activity
Yep.
in real time,
Okay.
looking for any kind of suspicious behavior.
So it's like having a security camera that not only records what's happening,
Right.
but also alerts you if someone's trying to break in.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
And then you've got network segmentation,
Right.
which is another really important tactic.
So that's basically dividing your network into smaller,
Yeah,
more isolated segments
exactly.
to kind of limit the damage if Turla gets in.
Exactly. So even if they compromise one segment,
Right.
they're going to have a much harder time spreading to other parts of the network.
It's like having multiple layers of security,
Right.
each with its own defenses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the zero trust security model.
Oh, yeah. Zero trust. That's become quite a buzzword in the cybersecurity world lately.
It has.
Is it really all it's cracked up to be?
It can be very effective,
Okay.
but it has to be implemented correctly.
Right, because I imagine Turlo's probably figured out ways to bypass it if it's not done properly.
Oh, absolutely. They've been known to exploit weaknesses in the authentication process or use compromised credentials to get in.
So it's not a magic bullet.
No, it's not a silver bullet.
It's about understanding the technology and how to use it against a specific threat like Turla.
Exactly. You have to adapt it to the specific threat.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the technology, but what about threat intelligence?
Right.
What role does that play in staying ahead of a group like Turla?
Threat intelligence is all about gathering information about potential threats.
Okay.
So that includes their tactics, their techniques, their procedures.
So it's like having your own spy network.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
By understanding how Turla operates, what tools they use, what kind of indicators of compromise they leave behind, organizations can strengthen their defenses.
That makes sense. But how do organizations actually get this threat intelligence? Do they have to, like, hire their own team of spies?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
There are government agencies like CISA and the FBI that release alerts and reports
Yeah.
about emerging threats, including ransomware groups.
So the information is out there,
It is.
but it might take some digging to find it.
Yeah, exactly. And then for more comprehensive and tailored intelligence, there are commercial providers
Oh, I see.
that offer a whole range of services.
Oh, okay.
They can give you real-time updates on Turla's activities, track their infrastructure, and even help you analyze potential compromises.
So having access to that kind of intelligence could be a real game changer.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so let's say despite all these precautions, an organization does get hit with Turla ransomware.
Right.
What happens then?
That's where your incident response plan comes in.
Okay.
It basically outlines all the steps you need to take
Right.
in the event of an attack.
So it's like a fire drill, but for cyber attacks.
Exactly. Just like you'd practice evacuating a building in case of fire,
Right.
you need to practice your response to a ransomware attack
Okay.
to make sure everybody knows what to do and can act quickly and effectively under pressure.
Makes sense. So what are the key elements of a good incident response plan then?
Well, it needs to clearly define roles and responsibilities. So
Okay.
who's in charge of communication, who's responsible for containment, who handles data recovery.
Right, so you avoid that whole too many cooks in the kitchen situation.
Exactly. You need a clear chain of command.
Okay.
And the plan should also include very specific procedures for containment, eradication, and recovery.
We talked about those earlier, but let's dig a little deeper.
Sure.
What does containment actually look like in a real-world scenario?
So containment is about isolating those infected systems to prevent the ransomware from spreading any further.
Right.
That might involve disconnecting machines from the network, disabling accounts, maybe even shutting down certain services.
So you're essentially creating a digital quarantine zone.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Okay.
The goal is to limit the damage, to contain the attack, and stop it from spreading to critical systems.
Makes sense. And once you've contained the threat, how do you go about eradicating it?
So eradication involves actually removing the ransomware from the infected systems
Right.
and then securing any compromised accounts.
Okay.
So you might use anti-malware tools, you might restore systems from clean backups,
Okay.
and of course reset passwords.
Okay.
A lot of moving parts.
And then finally, there's the recovery phase.
Right,
This is where you get your systems back online and your data restored.
exactly. Recovery is all about getting back to business as usual as quickly and safely as possible.
Right.
And this is where having those reliable backups becomes so important.
Yeah, if you have clean, up-to-date backups of your critical data, you can restore your systems pretty quickly.
Exactly.
And this is where Stonefly solutions really shine, right?
Absolutely.
We talked before about their air-gapped and immutable backups,
Right.
which seem like a really strong defense against this kind of thing.
They are, I mean, Stonefly's approach to backup and disaster recovery is really built with ransomware in mind.
Okay.
So their air-gapped backups are physically isolated from the network.
Right.
So even if ransomware is spreading through your systems, it can't touch those backups.
So even if the attackers manage to encrypt your live data,
Yeah.
you still have those backups safe and sound.
You got it. And then the immutable backups add another layer of protection
Okay.
because the data in those backups can't be changed or deleted,
Right.
even by attackers who might have gained administrative privileges.
So it's like having a vault that's completely ransomware proof.
Exactly.
That's reassuring.
It provides peace of mind knowing that you have that level of protection in place.
Yeah, because dealing with a ransomware attack is stressful enough
It is.
without having to worry about whether you can recover your data.
Exactly. You can focus on containment and eradication knowing that you have a reliable and secure way to recover.
So Stonefly really takes the worry out of that part of the process.
You do.
Okay, so it's clear that a multi-layered approach is really important here.
Yeah.
But in your experience, what's the most common mistake organizations make when it comes to ransomware protection?
I'd say one of the most common mistakes is just a lack of preparedness.
Okay.
A lot of organizations just don't have a solid incident response plan,
Oh, really?
or they haven't tested it properly.
So it's like having a fire extinguisher but not knowing how to use it when a fire breaks out.
Exactly.
Okay.
The plan needs to be well documented, regularly tested, and everyone involved needs to know their role.
Makes sense. And is there another common mistake you see?
Yeah, I'd say underestimating the importance of backups.
So either not having backups at all
Right.
or having backups that aren't really adequate.
Yeah, both can be a problem.
Okay.
Not having backups is obviously a huge risk,
Right.
but having backups that are outdated or incomplete or not properly secured can be just as bad.
So investing in a solid backup and disaster recovery solution like the one Stonefly offers is really a no-brainer.
It's one of the smartest things an organization can do.
Okay.
And it's not just about protection against ransomware either.
Yeah.
It's about business continuity,
Yeah.
being able to recover from any kind of disaster, whether it's natural, a hardware failure, or a cyber attack.
So it's about resilience.
Exactly.
Okay, well, it seems like a lot of organizations are starting to realize that
They are.
ransomware has become such a widespread threat that you just can't ignore it anymore.
That's right. And the attacks are getting more sophisticated,
Yeah.
more frequent.
Right.
It's a constant evolution.
So we really do have to stay informed, stay proactive, and try to stay ahead of the curve.
We do.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
That-
We've talked about Turla, their tactics, their impact. It's a lot to take in, but I think it's really important to understand what we're up against.
I agree.
It allows us to make better decisions about how we protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
So before we move on to the next section, I just want to emphasize that the fight against ransomware, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
It is.
It requires ongoing vigilance, a willingness to adapt, and a commitment to continuous improvement.
I couldn't agree more.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's get into some real-world examples of Turla attacks.
Good idea. Seeing them in action really brings it home. Like the Solarwinds breach.
Yeah, I remember when that happened thinking, how did they manage that?
It was a masterclass in infiltration.
Going after a trusted software company?
Yeah.
Using their updates to spread malware to all their customers?
Yeah, it exposed the vulnerability of the whole system.
And the impact was huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
Government agencies, Fortune 500 companies.
It made everyone wonder who's next.
Right. And it showed Turla's after more than just quick money.
They were stealing sensitive data.
Exactly. It's about the long game for them. Building a library of secrets.
A dossier they can exploit later on.
Exactly. Then you look at the attack on Ukrainian military networks. They used a real mix and match approach there.
Yeah, custom malware, cyber criminal tools.
Whatever works. Adaptable and opportunistic.
Like a Frankenstein's monster of cyber weapons.
That's a good analogy. And they infiltrated military networks, stole data, potentially disrupted operations. It's scary stuff.
Highlighting the very real threat they pose in those geopolitical situations.
Absolutely.
And then there's the Starlink attack, going after a satellite internet constellation.
That one was audacious.
A system that's often used for really critical stuff. It shows they're not afraid of anything.
They're not afraid to target those supposedly super secure infrastructures. They find vulnerabilities where we don't even think to look.
It's a good reminder that no system is completely foolproof.
Especially against an adversary like this.
Okay, and we can't forget about the attack on critical infrastructure in Pakistan, targeting energy, telecommunications, essential services.
They're willing to cause chaos. And in that case, They exploited a known vulnerability
Really?
in a really common software component. So even if we know about a weakness, if it's not patched,
It's still a target.
an open door.
So looking at all this, what are the big lessons? What should organizations be taking away from all these examples?
Well, the big one is Turla's adaptability.
Yeah.
They're resourceful, they'll use anything that works, their own malware, stolen tools, zero-day
You
exploits.
can't just defend against the known threats.
Exactly. And it's not just about ransomware, it's espionage, data theft, disruption.
So we need a more comprehensive defense.
Defense in depth, not just preventing attacks, but detecting them quickly and responding effectively, having a solid incident response plan,
Right.
reliable backups,
Yeah.
and the right security tools.
And this is where Stonefly comes in, right?
Absolutely. Their air-gapped and immutable backups are designed for this kind of threat.
It's that insurance policy, that safety net.
Knowing you can recover, it takes some of the pressure off.
Yeah.
Peace of mind.
Well, it's been a real eye-opener talking about Turla. It's a bit scary, but I think it's important to know what we're dealing with.
I agree. Awareness is key.
It allows us to make better decisions. So as we wrap up, I think it's clear that the fight against these threats is never truly over.
It's an ongoing battle.
Vigilance, adaptability, and continuous learning are key.
Absolutely.
And remember, there's help out there. Resources, experts, solutions. You're not alone in this.
That's right.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Turla. Stay safe out there, everyone. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.